Oh,
This is the lecture for European history for Tuesday, the 26th of October, 2021. One of the questions that people who are fascinated by the book of Revelations ask is, what does the number 666 mean in reference to the beast? Your notepad out. One possible answer that I've heard from theologians is that it is a reference to 2/3. And that of all the people ever born, about 2/3 will categorically refuse to humble themselves and join with God.
What did you get?
666.
2/3?
2/3.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bless you. There are tissues over there if you need them. That's a pretty, on the one hand, dismal notion that of all people, even if they hear the word, even if they hear it in a compelling way, 2/3 will reject it. Honestly, I think that the thought of 1/3 accepting salvation is optimistic. The notion of an elect, of a Calvinistic, predetermined, predestined elect, is very hard to wrap our brains around, and especially what they do with it. The Calvinistic concept of predestination deals with the omniscience of God. Omniscience means all-knowingness. Omniscience, all-knowing. And all-knowingness includes everything, past, present, future. So would an all-knowing being have any question about how your life was going to turn out? Probably not. You don't understand how your life is going to turn out. I don't understand how my life is going to turn out. We live in hope, and we face fear over the future. That's the price we pay for having a sense of awareness, sentience, and the future. We worry about it. We cannot help but worry about it. The question is, does worry about the future steal life from the present? It can. It's something to watch out for. But an all-knowing God knows things that are mysterious to us. So, the almost universal pre-industrial religious and philosophical notion that our free will is key to our existence squares with Calvin's notion of the omniscience of God and predestination by how we deal with the question of time. We don't know the future because we experience time moment by moment. We are time travelers, traveling at 1 second per second forward into the future, as if time has directions. Whereas the Lord God Almighty sees time as one thing, as one object, past, present, future. Not a mystery, not experiencing time the way we do. Now, we could go further and explore the notions of Einsteinian physics that talk about relativism, which is the notion that the faster you go closer to the speed of light, the more the time dilates. We have this proven, by the way. A satellite in orbit does not experience 1 second per second time the way a person standing still at sea level does. Speed does change. Not only one's relative perception of time, how it feels, but actually how time itself progresses. The warping of space-time affects us not only in space, but in time. But that isn't the point of Calvinism. Predestination says that God knows. So, God was willing to make all sorts of people, even though most of them would not accept salvation. How do you square that with a merciful God? Well, we have free will from our perspective. We can choose or not. That choice matters very much to us, even if God knows it. That's the reasonable, as I see it, part of predestination. And being a Reformed Christian, I am a Calvinist. So, it is something I've thought about. But it gets weird when the church itself, when puritanical churches, when pilgrims, when the Dutch Reformed Church or the Scottish Presbyterian Church, the Congregational Church, the Wesleyan Church, other churches of those, well, not the Wesleyans because they didn't exist yet, but other churches of those times start talking about the elect. Now, God knows who the elect are. The elect are those people who in the end will accept salvation and will live accordingly. They are the elect. They are the saved. But sometimes church groups begin to say, we know who the elect is. Think about that. We know who the elect is. So they are claiming a sure and certain knowledge of salvation and damnation, which is kind of hidden from people. Some of these groups say we know who the elect is because they're fundamentalists. Now, fundamentalism, and this isn't a bad definition to remember, fundamentalism.
You spell that?
Fundamentalism. Fundamentalism.
I just need more time to write.
Fundamentalism. I'm saying it. You sound it out. Okay? Fundamentalism.
Mentalism can.
Mentalism. All right, mentalism. But since you're asking it, it's making me not want to write it down. So I'll have to overcome that. Fundamentalism.
That's not. What is that?
Okay. So, fundamentalism is the belief that life can be reduced to a simple rule book. Fundamentalism is the belief that life can be reduced to a simple rule book. Those who are seen to obey are saved. Those who do not obey are damned. Simple rule book, tangible rules. This is legalism writ large. The idea that law defines faith, which, by the way, is one of the things that Christ himself personally argued against when he criticized the Sadducees and Pharisees and the temple priests. But there are fundamentalists of all kinds. There are fundamentalist Hindus. There are fundamentalist Buddhists, not as many. There are fundamentalist Muslims, quite a few. There are fundamentalist Jews, oh yes, and there are fundamentalist Christians, Catholics, Protestants, and Reformed. Fundamentalism is an idea that transcends particular religions or philosophies. Life can be reduced to a simple rule book. You either obey it or you don't. You're either saved or you're damned. It's a very Manichaean way of looking at the world. Manichaean coming from Zoroastrianism. Ultimate light, ultimate darkness, nothing in between. It's black or it's white. Racist. So, fundamentalists within this movement try defining the elect as those who they observe obeying all the rules, being goodies, goody little two-shoes. And if they're observed to obey all the rules, they are probably one of the elect. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it, and this is, I don't have a name for this, this is simply breathtakingly self-serving, is to assume that if you are a member of our church in good standing, you're probably one of the elect. If you're not, So they equate being a member of a church, a particular church, denomination, in good standing, which probably means they're going to obey the laws and rules, at least seem to be obeying them. And if you are, we're going to assume that you're saved. Okay. But that leads to an obvious, self-evident heresy. Yep, there are still heresies, even if you get rid of a unitary Catholic Church. There are still evident, obviously false teachings. So, here's a heresy that comes from a misapplication of a notion of the elect and of predestination. It'll be when I'm done.
Do you need to write down predestination?
You should know what predestination is. It's already in your notes. So you should certainly have written it down yesterday. And it is the belief that God knows all, including the future, including who is saved and damned. If I am one of the elect, if my church recognizes me as one of the elect, because I am a good and righteous fellow, and it is settled, I'm going to heaven, I am saved. And that's done. There's no question of whether or not I'm saved or damned. God already has determined that. And I decide that you need to die, and you need to die, and why not you too?
Me too.
And for the heck of it, sorry. See, if I'm holding a gun, I get all nasty. Yeah, sure. Boop. There. So I am just placed 5 bullets downrange into the skulls of my students, which is not a good thing to do.
As he reloads.
No, making the gun safe to hold again.
I don't think if you hold it, it's safe.
You have a concealed carry permit, don't you?
What happens? I'm already saved, right?
No.
No.
Yes.
By the logic of predestination,
Yes.
if I have already been declared one of the elect, God has already chosen to save me for reasons that make sense to Him. So presumably, my act of student-aside, multiple student-aside, including one suicide by Genorio, this must be okay. I can do whatever I want. You see the problem there?
Yeah, I did.
Haley, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, okay. So, it kind of depends if that's where you're at. So, like, if you killed all of us and then you died, then that's different. But,
Well,
like,
I'm going to die eventually.
and
It's a
then
question
you
of
died,
sooner or
like,
later.
after that.
Okay.
But, like, if you killed all of us and then you're like, that was a bad idea, and then you, like, repent and stuff, that's different.
Well, yeah, but God is not somebody you can BS.
No.
So,
Like,
no,
if
I
you
actually
genuinely-
have this. I agree. I agree with the possibility of universal salvation,
Yeah.
which I mean, I believe that if Mao Zedong, somewhere in the depths of hell, decided that he wanted to accept Christ as his Lord and Savior, God would find a way for his soul to earn or to be saved. But if it involved purgatory, it would involve the absolute worst neighborhood in purgatory for like 20 million years.
Who's the worst neighbor?
Because Mao Zedong is the worst mass murderer in human history. Makes Hitler look like an amateur. So he was dictator of communist China. So, yeah, I believe that in general terms. But to go blam, 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 sorry God, blam, no. But the notion of predestined electoral status, you are one of the elect, can confuse people. And did, yeah.
So, the problem with this, with people saying they know who the elect is that there's no way of knowing what somebody's going to do in the future. And they're claiming to know that. And so, see, because if you shoot a bunch of people, then you're probably not one of the elect.
Well,
As in
See,
that-
unless they're like evil.
It's a
They could be enemies. They could be demonically possessed. They could be alien agents working for the Star Empire of the Black Nebula. We don't know.
Yeah, I know, but it's a logic circle.
Of course it is. That's the point. You got it. No, it is a completely deadly sort of logic circle. Because if you believe it, it leads to the most bizarre conclusions and actions.
Don't work.
There are people who believed in this, who were at Salem, Massachusetts Bay Colony, or it may have been Plymouth Colony at that point, and they engaged in the witch trials. Why? Because of a mass hysteria. Why? In part because of this sort of self-fulfilling notion of the elect. Quickly. Yeah.
So the way you explain that, though, it's like once you become one of the elect, you can't unbecome that. But I don't.
Some people actually believe that because God knows.
Yeah, because he already predestined, so how can he change?
Exactly.
But then he would know that you shot a bunch of people.
Yeah, but he's okay with it somehow because you're elect. You're trying to figure it out logically. There is no logic here. What this is an assertion by mortal men that they know the mind of God, which always, and I'm going to say this because I rarely say things like always is a bad idea. When you have somebody among you who says, I know what God wants, I know what God likes, I know what God doesn't. Really? You do, huh? Must be great for you. Stay away from me. Go live on an island somewhere. I'll surround it with sharks with frickin' lasers on their heads. Go away. Because it is delusional for a human being to assert a sure and certain knowledge of God. That's cultic is what it is. It's cultic. Yes?
Have you ever watched Bird Box?
Yet.
No?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so these people, they get possessed, and when you said, like, people possessed, it made me think of Bird Box. And you can see it in their eyes, because they, like, apparently...
So it's a TV show about demonic possession?
No.
I swear
Wait.
Asteroid!
Wait.
What?
So they, like, apparently there's, like, this wind that blows, and once you see it, you, like, know
yeah, you
like,
become possessed by the demon.
No, you like know everything. Like you like know the
Okay, that's bad.
the truth of the world. Yeah, and then you like kill yourself if you see the wind. So like everybody has to like cover their eyes with these birds. Anyways, I'm
What
not telling you.
kind of show? Is this a reality show?
No, it's not a show.
Oh,
No, I'm not.
okay.
No, I'm just saying that is slightly wrong.
Okay. Explain it, Miss Narrant.
Okay. So pretty much what it is like there's like these it's kind of like these like monster dudes, but no one can see them, because if you see them, then there's like some kind of like glare or something that makes you really, really depressed and see like your dead mom or something.
Okay.
It makes you kill yourself.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
what it,
So
they don't show it at any time during the movie.
Okay.
To make it scary.
well, it's pretty scary as a concept, and no, that is right up there with demonic possession notions because of it's like the hypnotic glare of a vampire. Yes.
Okay, I have like two really quick things.
Okay,
So,
make them really quick.
first, I cannot do scary movies whatsoever. Like, I can't do Disney Halloween shows. Like, I have a problem because people keep like, hey, you should come watch this.
Why are you telling me this?
We're just talking about scary movies.
Okay, fine.
Anyway.
So you can't do those. Number 2.
Yeah. Okay. Also, did you write on the left side of the board or just the right? Because the left side doesn't look like your handwriting.
This is handwriting.
It's my handwriting all over. Very few people besides me write up here. So yeah, these are both. Maybe this is before I saw the windy, breezy monster thing. This is after. The thing is, the breezy, silly monster thingy saw me and they got depressed. Anyway, sorry. So, there is a problem with predestination, and predestination is also something that is easy for people to lampoon. What the heart of it was, as far as I understand Calvin, is the notion that God is in fact all-knowing, and that from his point of view, there is a knowledge and an understanding of who in the end will embrace salvation and who in the end will reject it.
I hope it's me.
But it would be nice, yeah. Yes.
What is lampooning?
Make fun of. Make fun of. That's why the magazine National Lampoon was a comedy magazine.
Oh!
There you go.
What's
That's funny.
Like shampoo.
What do you want, Brad?
I just said it. Okay. To make fun of. Which I'm sorely tempted to do, but I won't because it would be wrong. So, Calvin, you're not. You're just
It's like this Republican
bubbly.
guy, you know?
So, Calvin is given control over the Swiss city of Geneva. The people of Geneva say to Calvin, help us to be God's holy city, his shining city on the hill. And being in Switzerland, of course, you know, in relative terms, they are a shining city on a hill. Calvin's Geneva ends up establishing an academy that's going to be very important in the education of Reformed Christian Europe. But very quickly, the question comes, to what extent am I my brother's keeper? Am I going to sit by and do nothing while my brother cheats on his wife? Or cheats on his taxes? Or cheats in other ways? Am I going to sit by when somebody is cursing and using foul language, blaspheming in the name of the Lord? Am I going to sit by and allow people to backslide into Romanism? All of these things become questions. Now remember, this is the same time as the Spanish Inquisition and as the Star Chamber Court in England. But in Calvin's Geneva, what is set up is very clearly a totalitarian police state that polices thought crime. If you do not follow Calvin's rules of Christianity, you will be punished. And it's not the kind of normal punishment that Europeans engage in. This is punishment of shame. You are publicly shamed. The stocks become a big deal in Reformed Christian communities. And the stocks are, it's a bracket where a person has to kneel down. And there are 3 holes. There's a big hole for the head, 2 holes for the arms, then you close it. This is 2 pieces, top of the hole, bottom of the hole. And there you are, stuck, with your hands and your head, and you're kneeling down. And everyone who walks by you, because this is in the town square, gets to kick in the butt or throw things at you like fruit or rocks or spit on you or make fun of you because they are a sinner. Their sin is publicly known because it'll be written somewhere. And this is called an attention getter. Being put in the stocks will tend to dissuade anyone from sinning like that again. Does it cause physical harm? Not really. I mean, your knees are going to hurt. If you get hit in the head with rocks, that'll hurt, but probably that's incidental damage. Is it better than getting burned at the stake?
No.
Yeah, it is. Come on. It is. You spend a day or two being humiliated as opposed to being lit on fire. Yes, it's better than being burned at the stake.
Brain damage is kind of rough, man.
Dude. Man. Dude. Remember my title, Miss Velasco. So, Calvin's Geneva ultimately fails because, in the end, totalitarian police states don't know when to stop. It's like the woke mob today. At what point do you say, we have achieved social justice, when you can't say men or women
or father
or they're birthing peoples or whatever? I mean, at what point, even if you wanted to satisfy these worthy, enlightened fanatics, at what point are they going to be satisfied? And the answer is, if you look at history and the history of revolutions and the history of movements like this, they won't be satisfied until they are eating their own. Until basically the people that started out as partners and teammates in the social justice experiment end up revealing the secret racism, the secret heresy, the secret sexism, the secret heteronormative cisgenderedness, the secret, all of this stuff. And these secrets are thought crimes that will be punished by the state or punished by the cult or the community. This never ends well. This always ends with the death penalty being applied to somebody who has a different way of thinking. It doesn't end in witch trials either. That's just a symptom, one of many. All sorts of people get targeted. Calvin's Geneva goes off the rails, and it eventually fails, just as Zwingli in Switzerland failed. However, Calvin's ideas not apply to a totalitarian police state do, in fact, inspire the people of Holland, the Netherlands, the northern region of Burgundy. They become deeply Reformed Christians. And the Dutch Reformed Church is still as strong, to the extent any church is strong in Western Europe. They're still strong. And they inspire the Scotch Presbyterian Church, the Scots north of England. Many of them become Presbyterians. And they inspire the English Puritans. And the English Puritans helped lead to the establishment of the United States because of the Pilgrims and the Puritans, the first Thanksgiving, and all of that stuff. So these ideas are also going to be used as a basis for the American Revolution. The Constitution, with our federal system, is based on at that time, the polity, the organizational structure of the Presbyterian Church. So these ideas, which are called Reformed Christianity and in English Puritanism, are extremely important to the structure of the United States because our early founders were Puritans. Okay, any question on Calvin? Today, the Calvinist churches, the Reformed Christian churches, are the Dutch Reformed Church, the Scots Presbyterian Church, the Congregational churches in New England, the Presbyterian Church USA, the Presbyterian Church of America, the Methodist churches, the Wesleyan churches. These are all Reformed Christian churches. So I've taught you know about Catholicism, Roman Catholicism. You know about Protestants like Lutherans and Anglicans, members of the Church of England. You know about the Radical Reformation, which leads to the Amish and the Mennonites. You now know about the Reformed Christians, the Presbyterians and Congregationalists. I want to go back to Radical Reformation for just a moment, because there's one other group I should talk about. Two, really. In addition to the Amish and Mennonites, the Quaker tradition comes out of the Radical Reform movement. This is not Calvinism. This is not Reformed Christianity. This is different. And Quakers, as I said, their worship service is silence. You come, you sit, you listen to the Word of God in your mind. And Quakers are pacifists. Quakers do not believe in fighting or in war. Then there are the Shakers. And the Shakers are called Shakers because literally they tremble in fear of God's judgment. The Shakers had a community very near to where I lived in Maine for 23 years, at a place called Sabbath Day Lake. It was one of the last Shaker communities in the world. They made their living by selling Shaker furniture, which is a form of New England antique furniture, and Shaker quilts and things like that. Now, the Shakers were unusual in that they didn't believe in sex at all. Men and women lived very separate lives. Shakers were not born. They were converts from other religions. In the 1800s and before, Shakerism was a big deal in certain parts of the world, including New England. There were a lot of Shakers who came. And to become a Shaker, you would give up your old life, like joining a monastery almost. And if you were a man, you'd live with other men. And if you were a woman, you'd live with other women. And you were celibate. That was part of the deal. What do you think happens to Shakerism over the long term, since they don't allow men and women to be married or have children or live in families? Ms. Daigle? Yeah, I could. I suppose I will. Why would the Shakers die out if they don't allow men and women to have families?
Why would they die out?
Why would they die out?
They don't look to like follow their destiny.
Yeah. And what do you call little people that follow after you?
Children.
That you have?
Oh, children.
Yes. Without children, without breeding new Shakers, they are at a competitive disadvantage. They are not going to propagate their faith. When we moved back to Maine in the early 90s, there was the Shaker community was very happy because a young man in his 20s had left the world and had joined their community. But this is a very hard life. It's a very difficult life. Their saying is hands to work, hearts to God. A Shaker believes that the devil works through people who are idle. So a Shaker is almost always doing something productive. Yeah.
Where would like non-denominational Christians be?
That's a much more modern thing. Baptists have a tradition. Non-denominational Christians today, as I see it, are a result of the post-1960s Vatican II churches. The Roman Catholic Church liberalizes in the 1960s as a result of Vatican Council II. Many Protestant churches, mainline Protestant churches, do the exact same thing. The Presbyterian Church USA, for example, was a fairly mainstream, middle-of-the-road church. Today it's extremely left-wing, to the point where they fund Hamas, a Palestinian terror organization, among other things.
How does that make sense?
It just does. So, to them. A lot of mainline Protestant churches went way far left. And what my mother-in-law heard when she argued against this, she heard from a young minister just out of seminary, well, if you don't like it, you can always leave the church. And she did. Which is not the sort of thing you want a minister to be saying to people. He might say, you could join this church. It might be more in keeping with your values. But he just said, no, just leave. So a lot of people who lost their homes in more traditional mainline Protestant, Reformed, and Catholic denominations ended up looking for a new way. And the kind of non-denominational churches you're talking about, they're very local. They're very small scale. It's basically a congregation with its own way of doing things and its own ideas. In that sense, it's similar to Baptists. But it's a reaction against what has happened to the major church structures in our society. That's my answer. I'm sure your minister would have a better answer than that. So ask him.
I don't talk to him. He's scary.
Oh, don't be silly.
Bro, I feel you.
You can be scary yourself. Just go up and be brave.
I am 5'1.5".
Yes, but you wear a pen on your glasses, which you should take off now because it's a little bit non-uniform. Okay. We shift over to the social impact of the Reformation. Now, in Protestant and Reformed countries, people begin marrying later. In Roman Catholic countries, mid-teen marriage is still a norm. But in many Protestant countries, even the women wait until they're close to 20, which is the age of brides becomes older and older in these other areas. Now, arranged marriages, you got to understand, arranged marriages are the norm.
They're great.
They are what most people, not just the aristocracy, but the bourgeoisie, the moneyed class, the merchants, the traders, the bankers, you don't leave love to decide who's going to marry who. No, you make an alliance so that your farm gets bigger, or so that your business grows, or so that your noble family rises in status and power. You don't leave it to love. Now, you might think, oh, God, that's awful. Do you understand what happens to marriages that don't work out when they were made over love? If you have a marriage partner that you don't really get along with, if it's an arranged marriage, what else? Of course you do. So you have legitimate children with them, you do your duty, and then you have affairs with people. And that was done. That was done by nobles, by royal families, by a lot of people. It was a very practical attitude. We married for the sake of legitimate children and the family name. But sometimes the marriages don't work. Sometimes they do. Sometimes arranged marriages really work out. The people become friends, they fall in love. If you have a marriage that's a love match, and suddenly you both change in different ways and you're no longer compatible, in fact, you're caustic to one another, whose fault is that? If you have an arranged marriage, it's somebody else's. If it's a love match, it's your fault. So arranged marriages are not necessarily as just over-the-top, stupid, or evil as many people today think they are. They actually were and are the norm in most societies on earth. And it reduces pressure. Matchmaker, matchmaker, give me a match.
Why do you know that?
Because I know Fiddler on the Roof. I love that song. I love the whole thing. There's also an H.P. Lovecraft horror version called Shoggoth on the Roof, which deals with eldritch horrors by Hockey. No.
Yes, continue, please.
In any event, I've been told I can't
You
hold
like to be
it. Family size begins to reduce in Protestant countries. Now, this is going to become much more prevalent in modern times, because for the last 50 to 70 years, birth control has become much more available and much more normal. Now, the Roman Catholic Church, I believe, still has a stricture against birth control for this reason. Birth control frustrates the commandment, be fruitful and multiply. So many Protestants and Reformed Christians choose to use birth control. Many Roman Catholics do not, because it's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to have children. You're supposed to be fruitful and multiply. There's an early hint of this in a slightly reduced family size. But are families rooted in love? Sometimes. But families are a practical arrangement. Need keeps people together. The need to eat, the need to live in a place that's not a complete rat nest. So family life is much more similar to what we would call work life than it is to sort of the happy home ideal that most Americans have. Now, there's an interesting thing that happens to the roles of women when we go from Catholic to Protestant in some areas. Remember, the Roman Catholic Church has real roles for women. The Roman Catholic Church reveres the Virgin Mary, Mother of Christ, and many female saints, whereas the Protestants focus much more on Jesus to the exclusion of all else. In Roman Catholic Christianity, if you wish to devote your life to God, you can become a nun. You can join a convent if you're a woman. And because convents are completely female, women in the Middle Ages, let alone in early modern Europe, became very powerful as an abbess running a nunnery or a canoness running a nunnery. And nunneries were big business. They were a big deal. So there were jobs for women in the Roman Catholic faith who wanted to marry Christ, become nuns. Protestantism didn't have any of that. What Protestantism does have, instead of religious vocation for men and women, the idea of joining the priesthood or becoming a monk, is what is called the Protestant work ethic. And this is something you should definitely write down. The Protestant work ethic. And the Protestant work ethic is alive and well, I hope. The Protestant work ethic. Protestant work ethic. You want to surprise your neighbor and write it down for her? Write it in really weird letters. Say it Ghost wrote it. Protestant work ethic. Oh, he's back. Okay.
I'm so cold.
Well, that's nice to know. Thank you for letting us know.
I
appreciate it.
Eat that.
No, I'm
Okay.
gesturing.
Stop. So the Protestant work ethic is this. The belief that everyday life is holy and that everyday work can be a devotion to God. The belief that everyday life is holy and everyday work can be a devotion to God. Fiona, write this down. Next to Protestant work ethic, which your neighbor Alexa kindly wrote down for you. The belief that everyday life can be holy and that everyday work can be a devotion to God.
Everyone what?
The belief that everyday life can be holy and everyday work can be a devotion to God. So, how does the Protestant work ethic play out in our society? because the United States is based on it. In many places, when Americans go to Europe, like Southern Europe, to Greece or Italy, they encounter what in Spanish societies is called a mañana attitude. The Irish used to have this too. A mañana attitude comes from the Spanish word mañana, which means tomorrow. But it basically also means at any point in the near future. Eventually. We'll get around to it.
Later.
You know, I'm waiting for a train. It was supposed to be here at 3 o'clock. It's 4:15. Where's the train? It'll be here mañana. Don't worry about it. We'll get around to it. It'll be there. Well, you said you'd have my car ready by 9 this morning. I have an appointment. Don't worry about it. Don't be so English. It'll be ready mañana. It'll be ready eventually, tomorrow, when we get done with it. A mañana attitude is something that Southern Europeans still have. Maybe it's the climate, maybe it's the culture. But work itself is something that you do as a part of your personal life. In Protestant work ethic-oriented cultures, which include Germany, England, oddly enough, the Japanese have their version of this too. Work itself is a devotional act. You go to work early, every day. You go to work early, you leave work late. You don't do just what the boss tells you to do. You work harder than that. You put your whole self into your labor so that when you leave work, you are exhausted. By being dedicated in this way, you are giving glory to God because God put you in that job. You do the job not as if you're trying to please other people, but as if you're trying to please God. In that sense, everyday life is sanctified. That is the notion of the Protestant work ethic. And from that come very hardworking people and societies that are extremely productive and extremely innovative. And again, Germany tends to have that. England, in its heyday, had that. The United States has had that. Whether we still have it is an open question, but we have, in recent memory, had this orientation towards hard work. Not just getting the work done, not just sliding by, not just being a slacker. The Charter Academy that you are all a part of is an expression of this Protestant work ethic. Not in the sense that you have to be Protestant, but in the sense that we are trying to teach you that hard work is nothing that you should be afraid of. That hard work is actually something that will help you be stronger to pursue your own dreams in the future. And also, so that you learn to aspire to excellence. The most caustic and undermining idea that deprives people of excellence is the belief that mediocrity is sufficient. You'll get by. You'll just do enough. That notion of acceptable mediocrity blights people's lives. It causes them to do half-hearted work. It causes them to be reactive and responsive rather than to be innovative and thoughtful and creative. It causes them to lean back where they should get intense. You can't survive as a student or a teacher at the Charter Academy without embracing the work ethic. Because the work ethic is not just a means to an end, it's an end unto itself. Being a hardworking person, how is that an end unto itself? I'll tell you. I've been around for over half a century. I've seen many people live their lives. There are many ways to happiness. Not everyone has to go to college, get a high-powered job, make a lot of money. There are many ways to happiness. But all of them, all forms of success involve hard work of some kind. Dedication. Doing a job that you can be proud of. It's as simple as that. So, that is, I think, no. I'm going to do a little more. No, that's where we are. Stop cackling.
I'm present for you.
Questions, comments, or thoughts? Absolutely.
Would you like this present?
I have no idea what it is. How can I tell you whether I like it or not?
Do you want the present?
I don't know.